Hi, and I'm your host, Stephen Van, over here on the Sports Talk Line Network, where we talk sports 24/7, 365. This is the Roundtable Special Edition, Sports Conspiracy Only. And rather than juice it up too much, I'm going to turn it over to our resident sports conspiracy specialist, Nate. No remorse, Dowdy. Sir, set this up for us and bring it home.
Well, I'm in my basement now, guys, and the government is spying on us as we know it right now. But I want to talk some deep state stuff right here. I mean, this is just bad. I'm going back to the 2001 AFC divisional playoff game. Oakland Raiders at Oakland at that time versus the New England Patriots. The Tuck Rule. And before we set this up, I want to get something completely clear. New England fans, you lost the game. Hulk Hogan landed the leg drop. He had you pinned 1, 2, 3. The refs inserted themselves into this game and made a reversal of an obvious call. Now, what I want to know, how does this change the landscape of the rest of the season? I'll throw it to you, Tom, first and foremost.
Well, I think the first question you got to decide who goes on to win the Super Bowl, because we'll go with the team, the Rams, the St. Louis Rams at the time. They won the NFC, so they kind of weren't impacted. You have either the Oakland Raiders, Pittsburgh Steelers represent the AFC against the Rams. So I think who would probably win that game would probably, first off, I think, be the Rams. I think the Rams would go back. They would win the Super Bowl. No one could match up with them. They could overpower everyone, but you had to get the mastermind of Bill Belichick in there to finally stop them. So that's who I think wins the Super Bowl that year. Josh, who do you think wins the Super Bowl that year if the Tuck Rule went the other way?
Well, I'm going to go with the Rams because I've been a Rams fan since back then. So, no, I'll go with the Rams too. They won it the year before. It definitely changed the landscape of the season. I mean, you look at that, just the one game, it was a divisional series. It's not like it was an AFC championship game or something like that. Like, it was so early in the playoffs. So, I mean, it could have been anybody realistically. Somebody could have got really hot. The Steelers could have, started being on a roll. So, I mean, I don't know if that's a tough one for me. I will take the St. Louis Rams. But I'm interested. That was a whole fascinating series of plays and events that took place in the immediate moments and aftermath of that.
All right, Van, I know we had some back and forth beforehand. I want you to weigh on this bad boy.
Well, then obviously the Jets, right? But, I just don't. We are playing what if it had gone the other way. So I get that. So, yeah, I could see the Rams winning it that year. I really don't know. Once one domino falls, a lot of other dominoes can fall and go a lot of different other directions. Okay. Any of the remaining teams could have won it. It would have changed a lot of things. It would have changed a lot of things. And it reminds me of the game where the final game between the Chicago Bears and the Washington Redskins, I believe it was. And this is a back before you guys were born game. And the final score was 72-7, guys. And excuse me, 72-0. But early in the first quarter, they'd had a guy drop a pass. It was a bomb. He was wide open and he dropped a pass, and he would have scored most likely. And so they were asking the other team, like, wow, would the game have been different if he would have caught that pass? And it was like, yeah, the score would have been 72-7. So like when one thing changes like that, you just really don't know what's going to happen after that, or if it's all just going to roll. What we know for the Patriots is that with the individuals involved on that team, it would have just helped them crystallize and focus. They're not weak individuals. They would have been a year later, maybe two, getting on their dynasty train. But I don't think it really would have, impacted them greatly overall.
Okay, that's interesting. Now because the Raiders would have advanced and they would have played the Pittsburgh Steelers in Pittsburgh, the week after.
Right.
Now, let's say they beat Pittsburgh and they end up in the Super Bowl. Remember, this was John Gruden's last year with the Oakland Raiders.
Right.
You
Then
think
he wouldn't have gone to Tampa Bay then, right?
that's what I'm asking you guys. Well, Van, I'll start with you. Do you think John Gruden goes to Tampa or traded to Tampa?
Well, yeah, and then, if he goes to the Super Bowl and wins the Super Bowl, then of course he stays there, right? Maybe, maybe not. Him and Al were not seeing eye to eye. It could still happen. I mean, you never know with Al Davis, but a lot of things could change when that happens, and job changes are one of those, which means Tony Dungy would have got his first Super Bowl victory in Tampa Bay.
Quite possibly. Now, Josh, what about you? Do you have an opinion about what would have happened to John Gruden, or if anything?
Well, like Van said, the tension between Al Davis and him was starting to mount, and I think it might have been something that was inevitable anyway. I mean, we were watching. We talked the other day about the Bulls runs, and championships don't always necessarily fix things. So, if it was a fractured relationship, then I think it might have been done already. A Super Bowl might have helped in Oakland, but again, who knows?
It didn't help in Dallas. I mean, it just, when it's fractured, it's fractured. I think you put it well. Well, let me ask you this, Nate. Do you think that the Raiders were robbed in that game?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, because it's a little.
Well, what about karma?
What's that?
What about karma?
What about
the Raiders? The holy roller, man. Kenny Stabler rolling the ball. He basically bowled it into the end zone for Casper to pick up and scream fumble. And they gave it to him. And then that's when they made the rule that you can't fumble it forward in the last 2 minutes of the game and score a touchdown. Okay.
Well, how about this? If we're going to talk about karma, how about getting ahead of the curve?
Ooh.
Punishing
Wait a minute.
How about punishing the Patriots for their future transgressions before anything happens?
Yeah. So this is a baby Hitler question, right? Yeah. Would you do baby Hitler? I think you would, man.
No. I mean, but the problem I have with this is because there's a number of plays over the course of the year, and there's been some whoppers. We go to the Dez's catch, non-catch in Green Bay, and we talk
whoppers.
about
I thought you said we weren't going to talk about Tom Brady testifying.
Hey, I didn't bring up Tom Brady yet.
Okay.
But and then also you have the NFC Championship game with New Orleans and the Rams, where the no pass interference calls.
Oh.
But the problem I have with that was there was still a lot of time left on the
That's
clock.
racist, man. Right? Okay. No, man. First of all, picking on people with special needs, I don't think that's very nice, Nate. Okay. It's not his fault that he moves like this right as he's trying to cover somebody and runs over him. That's not necessarily, pass interference. He just moves that way naturally. That's all that was.
I'm
Josh,
sure it wasn't pass interference. I don't remember there being a call. Like, I mean, I could check back on the game logs, but I'm pretty sure there wasn't a pass interference call on that one.
Yeah, he's right. No PI, none. Zip, didn't happen.
Well, I think we mentioned the thing about karma, right? Maybe karma came back to the Rams the next game.
Yeah.
It was like, that non-call, guess what? You're going to have one of the worst offensive performances and one of the worst offensive Super Bowls. You're going to be so bad. It was torture watching the Rams play that Super Bowl.
It was from a non-call to a no-show. And who didn't
Yes.
show? The entire offense. That's who didn't show. That was brutal. Yeah. And I agree with you with the karma thing. That's why, you talk about this. Kenny Stabler and Casper got the whole thing rolling, pun intended there, holy roller. Okay. That's what started this ball rolling against the Chargers. They screwed the Chargers over. Okay. So they come back, they get their karma from the Patriots. All right. Then the Patriots come back and now they get their karma from the Tennessee Titans, don't they?
Not really. Not after 6 Super Bowls later. And
No. Because after 6 Super Bowls, man, I mean, you don't need a trick play. You just need to have your ass handed to you. And that's what happened.
Yeah, but there was no call that swung that game.
That's
that
true.
was just
That's
an ass
true.
kicking. So
true.
that would have been
Yeah,
cool.
that's why it was enjoyable. I thought, for a lot of Patriots haters out there, and I'm not a Patriot hater, but I tend to root for the underdog. It's just natural. And when that game won, I was like, whoa, this is awesome, man. This is incredible. And then the other thing I thought is, would you want to be the first team that plays Bill Belichick's team next season? Yeah, right. No.
Well, the craziest part about that game is another thing. Even after after everything was overturned and they kicked the field goal to tie the game, they allow Homer Simpson in his snowplow to go pave the way for Adam Vinatieri to kick the game-winning field goal.
That was beautiful, man. And by the way, I have it on very good authority that the driver of that snowplow, who was out on work release from prison, okay, and was actually got sent back to prison because they had to let him go, and then without a job, he goes back to prison. But he did get out after that, and he has not bought an alcoholic beverage in that town to this day. Okay, he just doesn't have to do it. No, just shows up, says, "I'd like a drink." They go, "Okay, here you go."
Yeah, that's another hero in the game, because that's another thing. It's just kind of like, why don't you stack as much things in your advantage as possible?
But now, hold on. What's the difference between that? Okay. Now, I understand a call that is just a bad call, because that's like, whoa, man, who is crapping down my back now? But when you get like fan involvement, like, what's the difference between a guy swooping out with his what was it, Gamboni or whatever he was on there? Okay, yeah, his 3-mile-an-hour
Zamboni.
crime there. Okay, and the difference between Charlotte fans going down and setting off the fire alarms of the visiting team in the middle of the night, or San Francisco fans dropping hot pennies down the back of players' shoulder pads as they're coming on and off the field down the on ramps at Candlestick. I mean, fans becoming involved, and San Francisco, the 12th man, just with pure force of noise affecting the game. I mean, is that in the same ballpark as boner calls like the referee and the Packers, those horrible calls in the end zone?
No, they're not, because with this too, like, fans can kind of do whatever they want, but if a player is strong enough, they can mentally block that out. But a referee, that's a decision where 15 yards could make a major decision or make a major difference in a football game. That could be the difference between being in field goal territory or out of field goal territory. It can go, many different ways. A fan cheering, okay, it could be a little bit intimidating, but you can also play well enough to shut those fans up if you're the opposition team. Nate, what do you got?
Well, and also, it wasn't a fan that did this. This was a stadium employee that did it. Not that
he was a fan. Come on.
Yeah. On top of that, but
he was wearing the jersey, man. He was a fan. This was his dream gig, man. Oh.
But with that being said, it was one on top of the other, and this wasn't. The problem that really bothers me is the call.
He got the ball rolling for the Patriots, didn't he?
What's that?
I mean, he really got the ball rolling for the Patriots, because after him, it was the film crew. I mean, so, he kind of made it okay for all of the ancillary staff to like, oh, yeah, we're going to like point the camera over here. We're going to do this now. We're going to like take a little out of the football. Ooh, that's good shit. That's good. And then, so now all of a sudden with the Patriots, all of the ancillary staff are pitching in, right?
Well, yeah, and then it was the problem I had with the call in the first place was I can understand the
you had money on Oakland, yeah, I get that.
Van interrupting, but it was they made the right call on the field, and then they had the time to review it and then overturned it, which had to be clear and it had to be definitive. That's the problem I had.
Well, have you ever seen the YouTube video about if referees and players actually were honest about their fantasy teams? And so it was like the guy scores a touchdown and the one ref is throwing the flag and they're going like, well, instead of this, we're going to make it, okay, offsides. And yeah, to heck with that. We're going to make it unnecessary roughness after the play so that he scores, so that I get my fantasy team, and then you can get the extra point. And then so they're discussing all of this. So I mean, it's like that, isn't it, Tom?
Well, I mean, I was kind of gonna go back to Nate's point, and I think what makes it more frustrating was how this was a missed call, and they went back to replay, and it was, all right, it was a fumble, game over, but nope, they go back there, they make up a rule that no one has ever even heard of. Phil Sims, who was broadcasting that game, even said they're going to talk about this for a long time. And the way the Patriots season went and the way the Patriots have gone since that one game, you kind of got to wonder, like, all right, really? Like that's what makes it more infuriating, is that there was replay, you reverse the call, and now, that was like the first thing. It's almost like, oh great, they're Luke Skywalker, and then they turn into Darth Vader a few years later. So that's kind of the way it goes. Josh, how do you feel about when referees go to replay and still get the play wrong?
Well, you don't like it when that happens, but I didn't think that was the case in 2001. I mean, if you said who didn't know about the rules, they put the rule in place in 1999. So I mean, no, I do have it. I could read it.
Thank you.
According to the way the rule is interpreted, Walt Coleman went up, saw the replay, and easy call, like he said. So,
and now, Josh, isn't that why they made the tuck rule?
And then
they adjusted it,
and then they went.
So it was not a bad call by the referees. So I understood that they turned it over, and then this is what gets me is they're given bad info. I mean, they all agreed that that was the right call to make. But is there anybody here on this panel of four that thinks it was the right call to make for the game of football?
No.
No. By the way, Dez caught it. Okay.
It was PI against the Saints.
Yeah. And it was PI against the Saints. They were not but in this instance here, and actually this has nothing to do with the PI rule against the Saints, because they man, I don't know what they were smoking on that, but I sure wish they would have shared it. In these instances, the rule was called correct, right, Josh?
Yeah, as far as I can interpret it, and
as far as I could too,
and as far as obviously the rest of the refs could. But I love though because it started off the whole Patriots, having questionable Super Bowl wins, and kind of we talked in the green room. Well, they didn't make the playoffs the next year, so does the landscape completely change for them? Does it drop out? Does are Tom Brady and Bill Belichick doing those amazing things still? If this doesn't happen, so it is so fascinating, Tom.
I kind of want to elaborate on that, and you bring up a good point. The next year, it kind of looked like the Patriots had the Super Bowl hangover, and they didn't make the playoffs.
Right
now, if the Patriots lost that game, how would 2002 be impacted? So would the Patriots make the playoffs in 2002 if they lost that game against the Raiders in the 0-1 playoffs? Nate, how do you feel about that?
Well, it's interesting because, like you said, they missed the playoffs. But what I really want to know, with the newfound fame Tom Brady got from winning the Super Bowl when he clearly fumbled, not the tuck rule, I want to know, is he still a virgin? I mean, the amount of pussy that was slaying around that guy after he won the Super Bowl. Is Tom Brady still a virgin? Van, I'll start with you.
Well, not in your eyes, Nate. Okay. Not in your eyes. Not at all. And it doesn't really matter. I mean, the only reason that the Patriots get grief is because they win all the time. And this is America. And actually, the world over loves an underdog. I mean, that's not entirely true. There's so many sports out there that are built on worshiping the winner. Baseball, Yankees. We know about those kind of fans. Okay. Red Sox, etc. These guys are going to be in it every season, aren't they, Tom?
Yeah,
they are. Okay.
Sometimes it's the curse, because the Yankees are going through tough times because it's been 11 years since they haven't won a World Series. You know, to
And
put
how
it
long since Steinbrenner died? The real Steinbrenner, not this fake one.
he well, actually one of the sons died
Yeah,
a
Frozen
few
Two.
weeks ago. I think 2010 George Steinbrenner died. And it's kind of, you know, they built a new stadium, you know, and you can question George Steinbrenner's methods, but you never thought he would tank. You know, he was someone
No. He's
always
the
wanted to
Jerry
win.
Jones of baseball, man.
Steinbrenner was probably more successful, though, I think, when you really look at it. And
Not when you count those Super Bowl rings Jerry's got. Okay.
George Steinbrenner got 7 world championships under his reign.
Well, yeah, I mean under his, but like, what about his sons?
None, really.
That's my
Maybe
point. Then Jerry Jones took over. That's what I was trying to say. Yeah, then it's like they got nothing, man. So yeah, you know, the different sports are all going to handle it a different way, but nobody likes the bad call. But most sports like to have the same team winning every season. They really do. They're built that way. Tom?
I think TV networks like it when teams consistently win because
Scheduling is easier. Scheduling is easier. Yeah.
because 10 years ago, how many people hated the Golden State Warriors? Now they kind of built that up over the years. You know, Nate, how do you feel about, you know, do you think networks really like the winners of sport teams and get those dynasties going?
Oh yeah, they absolutely do. I mean, even the teams, franchises are built off of. There's certain franchises that are just going to draw the major ratings in every sports franchise. It's going to be the Yankees in baseball. It's going to be the Red Sox in baseball. It's going to be the Dallas Cowboys and New England Patriots in football. Basketball, always the Lakers. Always the Lakers are always going to draw all the ratings. That's what they're essentially rooting for. So yeah, essentially it's the networks, and then there's certain just teams that just have legions of fans all over the world that just.
Oh yeah. I want to watch Liverpool versus Dallas versus the Yankees versus Golden State in March Madness 7-game series playoff. It doesn't have to make sense. I just want to see it happen. That is ratings gold, man. That is ratings gold. And somehow you slip Sidney Crosby in there. I mean, you know.
Yeah, well, it's interesting when we go back to the original point. In 2001, replay was still fairly new. It was in its 3rd year in existence. And just the month before, if you remember, the refs botched a call with the Cleveland Browns and the Jacksonville Jaguars to a point to where they let a 4th down conversion play on, and then they spike the ball after, and then they go and say, no, that spiked pass didn't count. We have to go back to the original play and overturn the play before. And then fans started throwing bottles on the field. And then they said that's the end of the game with 50 seconds left or 48 seconds left on the clock. And then everyone just beeline to the locker room.
Well, yeah, they were empty bottles. That's why. Yeah, go ahead, Tom.
I was going to say, how much money do you think the referees were paid off in that game?
It
happened. Jacksonville Jaguars. So I really just think they're blind.
So it wasn't much.
Yeah, because anyone in their right mind is going to pay off a referee to give a win to either the Browns or the Jags.
Yeah, they don't have a fan that would actually do that. Okay.
You have to be a good team to have sports conspiracy.
No, you don't. No, you don't. No, you can be incredibly bad. Incredibly bad. That is not an issue. You definitely can, especially with referees, man. But now with referees and for stuff going bad now, what is worse? Referees that get together and they huddle and they have this horrible rule that they just can't quite get it right. You know, it's like, oh man, you know, whatever. So they go and there's angst over this and everything like this. Or when they just blow the easiest call in the world and refuse to admit that they missed it.
Well, I think it's really the worst when there's collusion. I mean, when we take a look at the missed call from the Tuck rule and we compare it to the NBA that legitimately had referees that were paid off to shave points during games, that's small potatoes.
Well, I look at teams like the Chargers. who they have a history. Matter of fact, there was one referee in particular that in the first quarter of games, he was just screwing them, man, on these fumble calls and stuff like this. He was saying, "Oh yeah, it's their ball," and they're going, "No, it isn't." And then replay would show, but this was before replay, so they weren't going to allow that. And I mean, so they went for I think 4 years in a row there where they were just getting screwed by this one ref. And finally, they made it to where he wasn't even going to go there anymore. He had to take out a full page ad in the paper apologizing for the bad call he made, and he admitted like boom, it cost you the playoffs, et cetera, et cetera. To me, those calls are brutal because it's no question he blew it, and then there's still nothing done about it. Tom,
I think in certain states and certain sports, high school coaches can ban certain officials. Do you think that would be something
until there's none
professionally,
left, huh?
if they haven't done so already, that they should implement? Josh, how do you feel about that?
Like implement like a challenge system for like
No, they implement a system where if you do not like an official, they don't show up to your games. They don't officiate your games.
Well, I think it would get a little bit exciting. I mean, you have to put. I don't mind it, but you'd have to put a little bit of a limit on it. Like, oh, if you don't like,
Be like challenge flags. You get two a year, man.
Yeah, you get a couple, a year. Because I mean, realistically, if you're saying, oh, I don't want this referee ever refereeing my games, well, it's really not up to you. It's up to the NFL or whatever.
And you don't have to have a reason. You don't have to dislike him. You might not like his style, whatever. Yeah, I think it'd be a great deal, man.
Yeah, I could see it. I would love to see it. What about you, Nate?
Yeah, I think it would be interesting if you could do it at the high school level. And here's my thought about referees blowing calls. I mean, you see players all the time getting fined for minor infractions, such as wearing a bad pair of socks that the league doesn't approve of. I think it's time to, instead of an apology letter that the referees send you a few days later, I think these guys need to start getting fined.
They do.
Oh, come on, man. Then fined. You're going to fine the player for offsides, right?
No,
and you're going to find the coach for the bad call on 4th and 1.
In the NBA,
you can't do
NFL
that, mate.
They already get fined. They fine their officials already and suspend them. They already do that.
Yeah, but that's for egregious behavior outside of the conduct.
No, it's for call. If they blow a call, they get fined and they get suspended.
Van, let me make this counterpoint to you. You say how like, oh, do you fine a player for getting offsides? No, but if a player plays poorly enough, they get kicked out of the league.
Correct, and there is a grading system that's in place. I think that they should have full-time officials. There should be a lot more done. But just finding an official because they blew a call. No, they're human beings, man. They're human beings. You should have a system there to where one referee blowing a call is hard. It's hard for that to happen. You should have referees talking, using replay, being active. I thought the AAF did a fantastic job with their replay system.
Except those 4-hour games.
So that's still a half hour less than the NFL.
Well, I mean, here's my thing. Players get fined all the time for missing meetings or missing training
by their team.
Right. So, I mean, they're fined for that. But I mean, here's my thing. If a referee makes a call just on the spot, I let him slide with that. But when it comes to replay and then they double down on their incompetence, that's when I think it needs something.
I hate that. I hate that. Well, I think there definitely should be grading and stuff like that. But I mean, yeah, that's rough. Tom?
I believe hockey was the first sport where if there is a replay, it goes into the league office. I think baseball does that for their playoff system. How successful do you think that system would be in major sports? Josh, what do you think about it?
It doesn't work that well in the NHL. They're still the same. We're still doing the same debates in the NHL about all this stuff. So, I mean, I guess it would help a little bit. It has helped compared to what it was at, but I don't think it would go, full on and solve any things. Nate?
Yeah, I don't know enough about those other leagues, but the only thing, people link me to the NHL all the time because Drew Doughty shares my last name, and thank Christ for him because now the Los Angeles, California knows how to pronounce my last name.
Well,
Did
Tom,
Jody?
it worked fantastic in the AF. It was touted as to how seamless they made it. And your methodology is important. You have to come up with the right back and forth and everything, and they really did. They had the replay official that was talking back with the network, and he was talking live with the official, and they were talking about, okay, what are you looking at? Yeah, this is what I'm looking at. His hand here, etc. Everybody got to look at it at the same time, including the fans. It was fantastic. It was so open. It was so simple. So, do I think it could work? No, it's already worked. Yeah, go ahead, Tom.
Now, with the XFL, which has now been deceased, they would have it where they would have the referees on mics. So when they would go discuss a penalty, they would air that so the fans would know. Nate,
Correct.
how do you feel about that?
Well, I think it would offer a lot more transparency in the league and through the fans and everything. And I really think it could be a thing the NFL adapts because we saw in 2001 when the XFL originally originated, the NFL took a lot from the innovation from the XFL. So I think it could be something similar that could be easily implemented in the NFL today. Josh, do you have an opinion on that?
Yeah, I would definitely like to see it in the NFL. I mean, like as long as they find a way to kind of speed things up a bit and kind of not take his length, because I mean that's the only thing they were looking at for baseball and hockey too is just the delays that it causes. I mean, when you're watching a game, it's super exciting, and then there's a replay, and as much as you want them to get the call right, 20 minutes, 10, 15 minutes, 20 minutes later, how long does it take to get the call right? Fractions of an inch or, splitting hairs when, the referees are human. So I could see them adapting some of it. They're just going to have to obviously just strategize it better.
Well, hey, I got something to throw at you guys. All right. Now, talking about replay and all this, okay, that's great. But ultimately, it comes down to what's riding on it. And, you go back to, the Chicago 8, where, gambling got involved. And with that, everybody was excommunicated for life that was involved in that in any way, shape, or form. And you follow that forward a few years. There was a few examples here and there. Even in the NFL, a couple of the Green Bay Packers under Lombardi were suspended for gambling. Man, it was though that's kept pretty quiet. But then everybody knows the Pete Rose thing. Where all right, he didn't gamble on baseball. He was just gambling, and boom, you're out for life. And now the NFL is going to have a team in Vegas. I mean, a couple of years before, Tony Romo wanted to have a fantasy something another in Vegas. They go, oh, no, it's in Vegas. You can't have it. There's gambling in Vegas. But now they're going to have a team. How are they going to separate it? Gambling is going to be heavily involved with that team. It's going to be going on. Tom, you got the first hand up.
I would say, there are kind of two things with gambling. The first concern is gamblers coming in and swaying the professional athletes. I think athletes make so much more money now that very few gamblers could match. Be like, oh, hey, why don't you throw this game? No, that will totally destroy a player. The second thing is now gambling could potentially be legal. In some states, it already is, and that's a way leagues can create revenue. So you're trying to tell me, we mentioned the Jacksonville Cleveland game, people will be more invested in those games because people need to gamble. People were starting to gamble without sports on speeches given by the president and what word phrases that he would use. They started betting on the NFL draft when certain people would be selected. So there are people who like to gamble. And I think that's something that would impact it and be like, know what, they'll probably regulate it, which means tax it heavily. And they probably make sure like players are like, listen, don't bet against your team, literally. But I'm going to ask this question. How do you think Michael Jordan would be reacting nowadays if gambling was legal in the NBA? Nate, I'll start with you.
Well, first of all, I take the point of view, let them do coke, let them bang all the whores, let them do let them run amok, let them gamble, let them do whatever the fuck. But yeah, I don't see Jordan. I mean, the guy is a compulsive gambler, from what I know, from what I understand. So I think you'd be in. Jordan has such a cult of personality about him. I think people would have glossed over that like they did in the '90s. I really don't think it really hampers his reputation one bit. Do you have a take, Van?
No, I just, the whole gambling thing, I think cheapens the sport. It raises too many questions, raises questions about the players. When players are gambling on the sport, when gamblers have access to the players and access to knowledge, it cheapens gambling. It's bad. It's bad for the sport. It's bad for gambling. I don't like it. Period. I think that the NFL sold out moving there. I think there was some huge payouts along some back channels. There's no other excuse for it to do the 180 degrees that the league has had about anything that's Vegas driven in the history of the NFL. And then all of a sudden, oh, wow, boom, we're all in Vegas. Let's go. Money changed hands. One way or another, something went down. Talking conspiracy theory, here it is, man. Favors were done. It's the only answer.
Well, it's interesting because you couldn't find a better franchise to move to Vegas than the Raiders. The ultimate rebels breaking the mold.
You couldn't. You really couldn't.
Joshua, do you have a take on the whole gambling thing?
I was just going to bring up, I mean, we've seen it for a while now, too. Just look at Floyd Mayweather, his fights. We know that he's, going and gambling money on certain things, certain rounds. I mean, it's not necessarily him, but his people are going and dropping copious amounts of money. I mean, so it's something that we've seen in Vegas in sports, in some of them. But I think, like Van alluded to, it comes down to dollars and cents. I mean, if these DraftKings and all of these betting websites and Bet360 can throw so much money at the NFL and the NHL, because the NHL is going to adopt it too, the sports betting. It's hard not to go down it. I mean, we're in a pandemic right now, and they're talking about opening up the sports leagues. Man.
Yeah. And Tom, for every NFL player or just sports player in America that has plenty of money, millions of dollars, and is not hurting, and there are more than one. For every one there's three that went through their millions of dollars like that, is wearing bling that they owe back to the bank and can't even afford, and to wait for somebody to come compete it, and will take 20 grand, 30 grand. All I got to do is like, hell yeah, baby. I'm pissed at that coach anyhow. Fuck him. You damn right that's going to go on.
Well, I think one thing that set up the NFL going to Las Vegas, first, there was a team set up in Las Vegas, a hockey team. So that kind of was the litmus test to prove, all right, we can have a professional sport in Las Vegas. There's a big enough draw. Second,
nobody caught us.
I think the second thing is a lot of these owners are getting behind DraftKings and a lot of the gambling stuff.
100%. I agree with you.
They already have that system set up. All right, once we legalize gambling, perfect, right there. So that improves their interest too.
Yeah, there is no difference between that and the other kind of gambling. There really isn't. It's just a way of doing the numbers differently to make the same type of bets. That's all you're doing. So yeah, I totally agree with you. Well, hey guys, this has been the conspiracy, workaround. And I didn't get to bring in any of my favorite conspiracies. They were all before you were born. And so I was born. Okay. The engineer gave me the heads up. Okay. All right. So, but before we go, let's work around the room quickly here. Before we do, thank everyone out there watching. Please hit that subscribe button, hit that notify. This has been Conspiracies, and we're going to do a lot more of this weird coronavirus shit before we get back to real highlights. Tom, talk to the people.
All right. You can find me on Twitter at defense_com, at DFENDS_com. Thanks for having me, guys.
Oh, man, a total pleasure. And we're going to go to the man, Mr. Nate of No Remorseville. Yours here. It's your time. You take camera one. You take camera two. You take. Holy God. Okay.
I take whatever I want. I take whatever I want. Anyway, you can follow me at No Remorse sports. No spaces, none of that, all together. I believe in you that you can spell. And anyway, what I want to know, we talked about the gambling, we talked about Michael Jordan. Do you think his gambling led to his father's demise? Let us know.
Comments below, comments below. And I'm sorry we don't really have time for Joshua today. No, no, actually, Joshua, not only are you going to sign off, I hope you're going to take time out of your busy day to pimp the hell out of your show that's coming up tomorrow. Go for it, sir.
I sure am. So they can follow me at Joshua Griffith 0. So you just add an @ and you add a 0 to my name there that I didn't change lazily. But I will plug my show that's coming out tomorrow. We got 3 p.m. Pacific time, 6 p.m. Eastern. You can join me. We're going to be talking sports, and I got a special guest. So yeah, join me tomorrow.
All right. I can't wait. It's going to be a lot of fun. Thanks so much. You can find me on Twitter at Stephen Vanover. Be sure and follow Sports Talkline on Twitter at Sports Talkline. Yeah, it's sort of like yours, Nate. It's really that simple. All right. And thank you again so much for taking time out of your day. Until next time, listen, like you play with intent.